Hello, everyone, and welcome to FF Plus, your outlet for weekly reviews that are simple, short, and spoiler-free. I'm your host, Aaron White. Today, I have not just a review for you, but also a corresponding interview, one that I had been looking forward to for a long, long time. I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on a sports documentary that I was blessed enough to be able to see the world premiere of at Sundance Film Festival earlier this year in 2023. And immediately I wanted to get a chance to sit down with these filmmakers and have a conversation about the documentary. Took a while for it to happen, but here we are, and I'm excited to share that after the review. So to get started, the film is Stephen Curry Underrated from A24 and Apple TV. It features Reggie Miller, Stephen Curry, Del Curry, Bob McKillop, Kevin Durant, Jason Richards, Sonia Curry, Brandon Payne, Sean Brown, Matt Matheny, Candy Adams, Lexus Safford, Mercedes Safford, Ryan Curry, Gail Kaufman, Cannon Curry, Riley Curry, Aisha Curry, Andrew Lovedale, Jim Fox, Thomas Sander, Michael Cruz, Lauren Biggers, and Steve Rossiter. It is directed by Peter Nix. Director of photography is Sean Havey. Music is by Nathan Matthew David, and it is edited by J.D. Marlowe. The runtime is 110 minutes, and it is rated PG-13 for brief, strong language. What's it about? The remarkable coming-of-age story of one of the most influential, dynamic, and unexpected players in the history of basketball, Stephen Curry. This feature documentary, blending intimate cinema verite, archival footage, and on-camera interviews, documents Curry's rise from an undersized college player at a tiny backwater Division I college to a four-time NBA champion, building one of the most dominant sports dynasties in the world. Full disclosure, I'm a huge NBA fan and a huge Stephen Curry fan as well. This is a basketball player who quite literally redefined the sport. His prowess from behind the three-point line as a shooter is unrivaled, and has created a world in which pretty much every single team tries to emulate the style of play that Steph brought into the league about a decade ago. Now, this documentary is not all about Steph's play on the court. I think it had to be awfully tempting for director Peter Nix to just go the traditional sports biography route of making an extended highlight reel. He could have cut frequently to well-known basketball talent who would wax poetic about Steph's incredible skill, backed by montages of endless, difficult three-pointers and layups. But Nix wisely avoids that route, and with some brilliant editing choices by J.D. Marlowe, he and his filmmaking team crafted a heartfelt and honest journey, beginning with Steph's unlikely rise, despite his physical attributes, going through his playing career thus far, and then also with a through line of Steph working to fulfill his promise that he made to his mother about finishing his college degree. All the while pointing out the triumphs and the challenges of all three of those things. Steph trying to get his degree is probably the primary reason this documentary exists. This is a very important part of his legacy, something that Steph really wanted to do to make his parents proud. His relationship with his family is on full display here, and it's just a joy to see. You really get a sense of being part of his family. You get the vibe that Steph is the same guy all the time, both when the cameras are on and when the cameras are off. His family is very, very important to him, and that comes through the camera quite strongly. We find out in the documentary that Steph actually was the only player under Coach Bob McKillop, the Davidson head coach where he went to college, not to have his degree. So there's an added layer of pressure there, something that he wants to fulfill in order to keep that legacy alive for this man who was a mentor and so meaningful in his life. Now, of course, the documentary is full of outstanding archival footage that showcases Steph's immense talent, but they do have quite a bit of unflattering play shown as well, which I thought reminded us that you don't achieve the level of success that Curry was able to without a lot of work, support, and determination. Two things that have really always mattered most to Steph are his family, as I mentioned, and then also his team. And those are centered in this documentary frequently. We see how important they are in making him the man and the player he is today. It's not just about him, though. It's not a documentary meant to propel him up on some stage as this massive, heroic presence. Steph truly believes in showering those around him with the credit, too. He refuses to take it all on himself. He's a very naturally humble person, and I think it makes it really easy to root for him, both in real life and while watching this narratively driven story about his life. In what is probably one of the best aspects of the documentary, the final act parallels the amazing Curry-led Elite Eight run by Davidson in the 2008 NCAA men's basketball tournament and Curry's fourth world title with the Golden State Warriors in 2022. It is exceptionally well crafted and riveting. It is just truly cinematic material that grabs your attention and makes you unable to look away, even if you know the ultimate results of what is coming. You find yourself with that feeling of being on the edge of your seat. It further also shows how much Steph has overcome, being overlooked and doubted his entire life. This is an earnest, energetic, crisply shot, expertly edited, scored, and directed character piece. I think it is one of the better sports documentaries that I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot. Stephen Curry Underrated will be streaming on Apple TV Plus on July 21st, and I am very excited for everyone out there to get a chance to see it and enjoy it, much like I have. Stay tuned next for my interview with two of the filmmakers, director Peter Nix and producer and director of photography Sean Havey. Good morning, gents. I'm Aaron, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to speak with me on the Feelin Film podcast. I've kind of gotten this together so that most questions are really for both of you, so just chime in wherever you guys see fit. And to start, I just want to ask how this came to be. This seems to be a very personally important story for Steph, and I was wondering if you had a relationship with him before the documentary or what led to you guys being the pick to put this work together.
Yeah, so I started a company with Ryan Coogler, joined his company a few years ago, Proximity Media. Steph and Ryan have known each other for a number of years. I didn't personally know Steph, but I've been making films in the Bay Area for north of 10 years. So I do things on the documentary side, and Ryan obviously does fiction. And, Steph felt that it was time for him to tell a part of his story, which was, he had made this promise to his mom back in 2008 when he left Davidson College to go into the NBA draft that he would graduate. He would fulfill the promise that he made to her to graduate. And he had tried to do it during the NBA lockout back in 2011.
Oh.
Couldn't quite get there. And he decided that this was the year that he was going to do it. And, what better chance than to roll the cameras on that effort. And then in the process, go back and look at his coming of age at Davidson. So that was the sort of framework for the idea.
I wish we had some footage of that lockout. He told a story. He's like, yeah, I'd roll up in my G-Wagon, pop out with my books. And I'm like, oh man, tell me somebody was rolling on that, please. That would have been such good footage.
It's a great story. We couldn't find that footage.
No, it didn't exist. He didn't want to make a spectacle of it, I believe.
Yeah, it seems that to be a very common theme throughout the documentary, something you guys capture very well. Things like his rap in the school cafeteria area.
Oh, that's
those it's just absolutely brought the house down when that played at Sundance.
Yeah.
There's got to be some advantages and disadvantages, I would assume, to capturing this story before his life is done. Did you have to kind of think through that and plan for that? Or, is there a follow-up documentary that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a question, when you're thinking about someone with his notoriety, his level of fame, like the why now question is significant. You think about, like The Last Dance, like Jordan, that was like years after, that happened. It was really about this moment of fulfilling this promise to his mom. His kids are getting older, and education is very important to him, to his mom. He was really starting to feel like, he didn't want his kids just to see him as this like celebrity basketball player. And that the simplicity of that notion that he wanted to document his attempt to fulfill this promise to his mom, and then in the process tell his coming of age story, which really didn't have a whole lot to do with sort of like the nuts and bolts of his day-to-day now, other than it being the foundation, was attractive to him and also to us as storytellers, because I didn't know much, if anything, about his time at Davidson other than remembering watching the Final Four.
Yep.
In 2008.
But I would say, to just add on that, like Pete and I, all of our films are pretty much rooted in observational filmmaking. So the fact that this isn't a complete retrospective sort of film, that we are in the now, like following him through the season, we have a lot of experience with that, right? Because all of our films essentially to date have done exactly that, where we're in real time documenting something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually exciting because it wasn't just a look back. We knew that something interesting could happen.
Yeah.
And I remember in early meetings.
Anytime Pete's involved, interesting. Like if you look at all of his films, something goes down.
Crazy things happen.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of The Force. I wanted to mention that so that hopefully people seek it out. Got to see that at Seattle International Film Festival a few years ago, and great story there. Speaking of just following him around and trying to capture this, so Sean, you did most of the camera work, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so what's that like? How did you approach this? Did you follow him during the NBA season? Were you just always ever present with a camera, just kind of hoping to capture a conversation? What's it like to do that in the documentary style?
He's probably the biggest name and face I've worked with. Like I said, I shot Homeroom, which was an intense year with Oakland high school students. I shot a little, COVID. Going through COVID. I'm used to doing, really long days holding a camera and just waiting for those little glimmers of exposition or moments that sort of yield something that is clarifying to a person's character. And so it was really, besides the fame, being around Steph, it was kind of just like a regular, it was kind of just normal. And I will say that he makes you feel very like he's just kind of like your friend, like just like a regular person. Honestly, he's just as he seems. In my experience, he's not pretentious at all. You ask him a question, like no matter what it is, or if you just want to like banter a little bit, he's always willing to do that. And so I felt very comfortable with him pretty quickly.
That's not surprising, honestly, from everything we've seen from him. Very much seems like a genuine guy. Did you feel like you got lucky with the championship being the year that you decided to do this? I'm curious how the documentary might have looked different if the Warriors had not won.
I think the Warriors got lucky. They got lucky because they hired us.
Oh, you brought them the champion. Yeah, of course. Did you get a ring?
We need a ring.
Yeah. No, I'm going to contact Steve Kerr. Yeah. We could share it.
So that's legitimate.
Yeah.
There's documented like evidence that things happen when we make a documentary.
Not always good, but this one turned out well.
It actually could have gone the other direction.
Yeah, one time a pandemic happened.
Yeah. But going back to, your question's interesting because it would have been a significantly different film had that.
It still had drive because of the Davidson degree. That was supposed to be the modern day.
We were unclear about that.
Right.
And we
That's
didn't
true.
even know. We didn't even, at one point it was very dicey.
Right.
Because we didn't know, we certainly didn't expect that they were going to win the championship, but we didn't even know if he was going to be able to fulfill this promise because it's
Davidson's like serious about their academics. This wasn't like an honorary degree. He actually did the work.
He had to do the work,
yeah.
which, you know, you get a sense from his day-to-day schedule. This guy's scheduled to the minute.
Right. He has a day job. He works out twice every day. And then like every other day he plays professional court, right? Like,
yeah. And there was a dearth. We didn't have as much footage from his time at Davidson as, you know, we wanted, you know, and so, you know, there was a number of interviews that are on the cutting room floor that we probably would have utilized. You know, Marcus Thompson, the writer from The Athletic, Jeff Van Gundy, Allen Iverson, Muggsy Bogues, those all ended up on the cutting room floor. Sorry. Sorry, folks.
As a fan, that stinks.
Sorry, Jeff.
I want that stuff in some sort of special features.
Features.
Physical
DVD
release
extras.
of this or something.
Yeah.
So speaking of the edit, I will say one of the things that really stood out to me about this film was the exceptional work by J.D. Marlowe, your editor.
Shout out to J.D.
Particularly in that final segment when you have the parallel seasons of Davidson's run and the championship season by the Warriors. It was one of the most cinematic, energetic, engaging pieces of sports documentary filmmaking. And I've watched a ton of sports documentaries.
Put that on the poster.
It's awesome. And I wondered how that kind of came about. How much was he responsible for
those match cuts?
That story? Yeah.
Okay. 100%.
Yeah. He brought that to us. It was sort of, I think, a little serendipitous. There's a step back 3 at some point in that montage.
Cool.
And it just kind of worked out, and he showed that to Pete and I, and we were like, do more of that. You know, because at that point in the story, not to get too in the weeds, we're kind of away from the Davidson story, which is in large part like sort of the heart of the film. And so we wanted to harken back to that a little bit in that montage, and those match cuts, that was totally JD. I mean, obviously we supported his vision there, but yeah, I mean, he's a great collaborator, wonderful editor.
Yeah, and he found the magic in the sort of emotional journey. You know the fact that he came from Davidson, and the fact that they fell short in 2008, that he fell short in making this promise to his mother, sort of narratively, for them, that Warriors to reach the promised land that season. After significant challenges, Steph got hurt again.
Right.
You know, was really quite remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. And other things that stood out to me was how in most sports documentaries, the focus is almost entirely on highlights. You could consider them to be almost like extended SportsCenter top 10 reels. You made a concerted effort to show a ton of unflattering play by Steph. And what was behind the choice to do that?
I think stakes,
narratively, it worked really, really well, and emphasized the support and how Coach McKillop, after that disastrous game against Eastern Michigan, where I think he turned the ball over 14 times.
Yes, what does he call it? His triple double, but he had like 14 steals.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, that was powerful, and then to see him come back in that next game against Michigan, which is not like, it's like a big time college program, and to find his voice, and even the beginning of that game, he shot an air ball.
Right.
He turned the ball over a few times.
Right.
And then he
clicked.
Going. He didn't give up, was really powerful.
But also a testament to, like, what if, and we would ask ourselves this question, throughout the process, like, what if he was recruited by a major D1 school, right? Mm-hmm. Like Kansas or Duke, like, they would have pulled him, and he wouldn't have been able to work through those failures or those mistakes.
Well, you need the external person, like, the decision for the coach to put you back in, but you also need the internal, the self-confidence, and that story of telling his coming of age story and meeting his grandma Candy and his cousins Mercedes and Lexus, and understanding the family that he came from. Really important to understanding where that, obviously he had a chip on his shoulder, but he had this reservoir of self-confidence that I do think, came from who his parents were, how they raised him, the importance of family in his life, that made a huge difference in his ability to push through these difficult moments.
Yeah, Sonia Curry is one of the best parts of this documentary. Every time she says something, you just lock into it and you realize how much of a great presence she's been in his life. That may be part of the answer to this next question, but I've got to ask this. So everyone pretty much universally knows him as Steph. That's what he's referred to as. He's called Steph. But you titled this documentary, Stephen Curry, Underrated. And in pretty much every single quote, anytime there's him talked about in text in the documentary with subtitles, it's always Stephen. What was behind that? It felt very intentional.
Yeah, well, I think what's happening there, and I'm not completely sure, and I switch it up a little bit. Like when I'm talking to him, I call him Steph. Hey, Steph, as do a lot of people. His family calls him Stephen.
Yeah.
And I think it is...
He prefers that, actually.
He prefers it, and I think it has something to do with that private, personal family space that is his own, that is separate from his identity as the way we know him as this NBA superstar. And I think there's something that's comforting for him about that.
Just don't call him Stephen. That's all.
Don't call him Stefan.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I think what you're saying makes sense because it gives the documentary much more personal feel. I felt incredibly invited into his family and his world in a way that is not usual. Usually it's very, I don't know, honorific of a player and not so much like you're being shown all of their warts and all of their struggles along the way. And I appreciated that.
It was very real. And the first time that we went to his house, like he's got his son cannons running around,
throwing water bottles,
and all of a sudden we're kind of like half babysitting Cannon, and it just,
that's awesome.
There's just no pretense to it, and it is refreshing to get that perspective on even I'm sure different types of celebrities or superstars handle themselves in their private life differently, but we were really not surprised. It's kind of what I expected because I sensed an authenticity in him every time I saw him speaking in news conferences. But to see, his relationship with his kids and his relationship with Aisha and his relationship with his family was refreshing.
It's great. Yeah, my only note for you guys was we needed more Riley content. Riley Curry is a superstar. Yeah.
Well, she was at that press conference.
Right. She was.
The first win, the first
I feel like the kids, I don't want to misspeak, but I feel like they were, the daughters were mostly in school while we were there.
It was more Cannon's
like preschool.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. So
he kind of stole the show.
He did. Yeah. Okay, well, last question for you guys. Just something I like to do on this show. We really approach things from the emotional perspective, as you probably imagine from the name of the podcast being Feelin Film. So we like to ask our guests, what is a movie that emotionally impacts you? Something that you think of that really just gets your emotions going. It could be any emotion at all, but something that has stood the test of time and impacted you in a significant way.
Nonfiction or fiction?
Absolutely nonfiction or fiction.
Oh man, I needed this question. I needed to think about this.
I know exactly what I'm going to say because it was the film that I watched here in DC. I went to Howard and I saw this film called Hoop Dreams, and I was completely blown away by. I'd never seen a documentary with that kind of intimacy and with that kind of emotional resonance and a commitment to following characters over time. And that was the film that, led me to becoming a documentary filmmaker. Fantastic. And coincidentally, it's about another basketball story.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's a tough one, man. I don't know.
There's so many.
I was talking about I was going to say Cave of Forgotten Dreams is like top 5 documentary for me.
Is that Herzog?
Yeah, Herzog film about the quintessential elements to man, and that is art, just like creating art. And what separated us from early hominids was Homo sapiens' desire to create art. And that always, I don't know, it always moves me. It's like, I sort of am an artist now. And
not sort of. You guys, this was outstanding, an exceptional documentary. I have been raving about it since Sundance. Can't wait for my friends to all get a chance to see it. So thank you for making it. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me about it. I wish you nothing but the best as it finally gets to come out for everybody to take a look at.
Well, thanks, Aaron.
Awesome. Thanks,
Aaron. Next Sundance. Let's hang out.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Okay. See you.
Okay. Bye.
Well, that's it for this episode of FF Plus. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the Stephen Curry documentary and my conversation with filmmakers Peter Nix and Sean Havey. I know I had a blast, and I really do hope that that translated well for the listening experience. As always, all of my social contacts are in the show notes to each and every episode. Please give me a follow, hook up, let's chat about movies, what you see. I love to do that all the time. Thank you, as always, for listening, for subscribing, for sharing with your friends. I'll be back soon. Until then, keep watching and keep feeling film.